Michael Harper was a man who had always been admired for his deep and unwavering faith. In his early 30s, he lived a life that revolved around his spiritual beliefs. A quiet, introspective man, Michael often found peace in his morning prayers and joy in the community he shared at his local church. His faith wasn't just something he practiced, it was the foundation of his identity. Raised in a loving, devout home, Michael's parents, Richard and Evelyn Harper, had instilled in him the importance of kindness, humility, and trust in God's plan. They were his role models, exemplifying a faith that was both practical and compassionate. Together, the family spent Sundays attending church, volunteering at shelters, and hosting dinners for neighbors in need. To Michael, their home felt like a small sanctuary filled with love, laughter, and unwavering faith. Michael's own spiritual journey had been inspired by his parents. He often credited them for teaching him to find strength in prayer and solace in Scripture, even during life's most challenging moments. He believed, with unshakable certainty, that God had a purpose for everything, and that, no matter what happened, His plan would lead to good. But even the strongest faith can falter when tested by the unimaginable. It was a quiet Thursday evening when Michael received the phone call that would forever change his life. He had just finished preparing dinner when his phone buzzed on the counter. The caller ID displayed an unfamiliar number, but something about the moment felt ominous. Hesitating only briefly, he answered, "Is this Mr. Harper?" The calm but serious voice on the other end asked. "Yes, this is Michael Harper," he replied, a knot forming in his stomach. "I'm sorry to inform you, but your parents were involved in a car accident this evening. They didn't survive." Michael's world crumbled in an instant. The words echoed in his mind, each one more incomprehensible than the last. He dropped the phone, his hands trembling, and sank to the floor. The air around him felt heavy, suffocating, as if the universe itself had turned against him. His parents had been driving home from visiting family friends when a truck ran a red light at high speed. The impact was devastating, leaving no chance for survival. Just hours earlier, Michael had spoken to his mother about their plans for the weekend. Now they were gone. The days that followed were a blur of grief and disbelief. The funeral, attended by friends, family, and members of their church, was a somber affair. People spoke kindly of Richard and Evelyn, remembering their generosity and unwavering faith. But for Michael, the words brought little comfort. Standing by their graves, he felt an unbearable emptiness. The prayers offered by others felt hollow, and the sermons about God's plan seemed cruel. For the first time in his life, Michael felt abandoned by the very faith that had once been his anchor. In the weeks following the tragedy, Michael's pain turned into anger. Anger at the driver who had taken his parents' lives, anger at the fragility of life, but most of all, anger at God. He couldn't reconcile the idea of a loving, all-powerful God with the senselessness of his parents' death. Why had God allowed this to happen? Why had He taken the two people who had devoted their lives to Him? Michael stopped attending church, unable to bear the sight of the pew where his parents had once sat. The hymns that used to bring him comfort now felt like mockery. His Bible, once a constant companion, remained untouched on his bedside table, gathering dust. He avoided friends from his church, unwilling to hear their platitudes about God's plan or their offers to pray with him. Each night, as he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Michael found himself consumed by questions that had no answers. He had always believed that prayer was a dialogue, a way to connect with God. But now, every time he tried to pray, he felt nothing but silence. Eventually, Michael stopped trying. As the weeks turned into months, Michael's anger gave way to apathy. He threw himself into work, using it as a distraction from the void inside him. He avoided anything that reminded him of his parents or his faith. Friends and colleagues noticed the change in him. The warm, optimistic man they had once known had become distant and withdrawn. Michael rarely smiled, and when he did, it never reached his eyes. One evening, a close friend tried to reach out to him. "Michael," she said gently, "I know you're hurting, but shutting God out won't bring you peace." Michael's response was cold. "If God wanted me to have peace, he wouldn't have taken them away." From that moment on, he made it clear to everyone in his life that he didn't want to talk about faith or God. For Michael, faith was no longer a source of hope. It was a painful reminder of what he had lost. Despite his attempts to shut out the spiritual, small, unexplainable events began to creep into his life. His mother's favorite hymn played on the radio during a late-night drive. A church bulletin was accidentally mailed to his apartment, and one day, while cleaning, he found a photo of his parents with the words, "Trust in Him," written in his mother's handwriting on the back. But Michael dismissed these moments as coincidences. He wasn't ready to believe they meant anything more. Little did he know, his journey back to faith was just beginning. After the death of his parents, Michael Harper's life fell into a predictable yet joyless routine. He immersed himself in work, taking on extra hours and projects to avoid facing the emptiness within him. Once a man who found joy in small things, morning coffee shared with colleagues, heartfelt conversations with friends, or Sunday afternoons spent reading on his porch, Michael now moved through his days with a mechanical detachment. His apartment reflected the change. Once filled with family photos, keepsakes, and his mother's cheerful potted plants, it now felt cold and lifeless. The plants had withered and the photos remained tucked away in boxes he couldn't bear to open. His Bible, which used to sit prominently on his nightstand, was now hidden in the bottom drawer of his dresser. Michael avoided anything that could trigger memories of his parents or his faith. The church where he once felt peace and community now filled him with resentment. He couldn't bring himself to sit in the pews or listen to the hymns his mother used to sing. On the surface, Michael appeared to be functioning. He showed up to work on time, met deadlines, and even managed polite small talk with his colleagues. But those who knew him best could see the changes. His once warm demeanor had been replaced with bitterness, and his laughter, once genuine and hearty, was now absent. He was a man adrift, unable to anchor himself to anything meaningful. Though Michael had done his best to shut out anything remotely spiritual, subtle and unexplainable occurrences began to creep into his life. One evening, while working late at his desk, he absent-mindedly turned on the radio. As static gave way to a clear melody, he froze. It was his mother's favorite hymn, Amazing Grace. The song transported him back to Sunday mornings when she would hum it while preparing breakfast. Michael quickly switched the radio off, telling himself it was a coincidence. But the next morning, he found his father's Bible, which had been gathering dust on a forgotten shelf, open on his kitchen table. He stared at it, his heart racing. The Bible was open to a passage in Psalms that read, "The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit." He tried to rationalize it. Maybe he had accidentally knocked it off the shelf while cleaning. Perhaps it had fallen open to that page randomly. He closed the Bible and returned it to its place, determined not to read too much into it. But the signs continued. While sorting through his mail, he found a flyer for a nearby church's grief support group. It wasn't the kind of mail he usually received, and he couldn't recall ever being on any mailing list for that church. Another time, while walking through the park, he overheard a stranger talking on the phone saying, "Sometimes you just have to trust God, even when it hurts." Each event chipped away at Michael's resolve, leaving him uneasy. Deep down, a part of him wondered if these moments were more than coincidences. But he dismissed the thought, unwilling to entertain the idea that God might be reaching out to him. As Michael retreated further into his isolation, friends and family grew concerned. His best friend, Sarah, tried to reconnect with him during one of their rare dinners together. "Michael," she said gently, "I know you're hurting, and I can't imagine how hard this has been. But shutting yourself off like this, It's not what your parents would have wanted. They had such strong faith. Maybe it's time to lean on that." Michael's jaw tightened. "Faith didn't save them, Sarah. What's the point?" His tone silenced her, and the conversation shifted to safer topics. But Sarah wasn't the only one who tried to reach him. His uncle, a deeply spiritual man, invited him to join a family prayer circle. Michael refused, saying he had no interest in empty rituals. Even his co-workers noticed the change in him and suggested he take time off or talk to someone, but Michael rejected their offers with polite indifference. To Michael, faith felt like a betrayal of his grief. Believing in a God who allowed such pain felt impossible. And yet, the inexplicable signs, the hymn, the Bible, the church flyer, lingered in the back of his mind, refusing to be ignored. The tension within him grew. On one hand, he clung to his bitterness, using it as a shield against further disappointment. After the events at the cemetery and discovering his mother's letter, Michael began to notice a series of strange and inexplicable occurrences. One night, he dreamt of his parents for the first time in years. In the dream, they were sitting on the front porch of their old house, smiling at him with a warmth that felt real. His mother, in her gentle voice, said, "You'll find your way, Michael." When he woke up, he felt an odd sense of comfort, as though their presence had truly been with him. The following evening, as he sat in his dimly lit living room, lost in thought, a single candle on the mantel flickered to life. Startled, Michael stared at it, trying to rationalize what he was seeing. The candle had been untouched for months, and there was no draft or match in sight. He extinguished it, chalking it up to some odd electrical phenomenon. But the next night, the candle lit itself again, this time as he sat reading his mother's letter. As the days passed, these signs grew more frequent. Strangers he encountered would make seemingly offhand remarks that felt strangely directed at him. A cashier at the grocery store told him, "Sometimes, the hardest journeys lead to the brightest destinations," after he had absent-mindedly dropped his change. A passerby in the park smiled at him and said, "You're stronger than you think." Michael couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was guiding him. While a part of him remained skeptical, another part, one he had buried deep inside, began to wonder if these were answers to the questions he hadn't dared to voice. Michael's journey back to faith wasn't without challenges. One such test came at work when a colleague, Emily, approached him in tears. She had just received devastating news about her father's health and needed someone to take over an important project she was unable to complete. In the past, Michael might have brushed off her request, feeling too consumed by his own struggles to take on someone else's burden. But as he looked at her tear-streaked face, something inside him shifted. He thought of his parents, who had always gone out of their way to help others, no matter how busy or tired they were. Without hesitation, he said, "Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it." The project was demanding, requiring late nights and extra effort. But Michael found himself feeling something he hadn't in years, a sense of purpose. Helping Emily not only reminded him of his parents' compassion, but also gave him a glimpse of the person he used to be, the man who believed in doing good for the sake of others. Emily's gratitude was heartfelt. "I don't know how to thank you," she said one evening. "You've been a godsend." The word hung in the air, and Michael couldn't help but wonder if it held deeper meaning than she realized. As the signs and experiences continued to weigh on him, Michael found himself drawn to his parents' favorite church one Sunday morning. It was a place he hadn't set foot in since their funeral, a place that once felt like a sanctuary, but had become a symbol of his anger and loss. The church was quiet and nearly empty. The soft glow of sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows cast vibrant colors on the wooden pews. Michael hesitated at the entrance, but something urged him forward. He sat in the back row, his hands clasped together, his head bowed. For a long time he simply sat there, letting the stillness wash over him. He thought of his parents, their unwavering faith, their kindness, their belief in something greater. He thought of the stranger in the park, the candle, the dreams, and the voice he had heard at the cemetery. Taking a deep breath, Michael whispered, "If you're really there, show me the way." In that moment, he felt something he couldn't explain. It wasn't a voice or a vision, but a profound sense of peace that enveloped him, like a warm embrace. The weight he had been carrying for years seemed to lift, replaced by a quiet certainty that he wasn't alone. Tears filled his eyes as he sat in silence, his heart beginning to open in a way it hadn't since the day he lost his parents. For the first time in years, Michael prayed, not out of anger or desperation, but out of a genuine desire to reconnect with the faith he had abandoned. It wasn't an instant transformation, but it was a beginning. Michael left the church that day with a flicker of hope in his heart, ready to take the first steps on his journey back to faith. Michael Harper was once a man of deep devotion, known for his unwavering faith and his active involvement in his church community. In his early 30s, he had built a life centered on spirituality, drawing strength and purpose from his connection with God and the loving bond he shared with his parents. But everything changed on a rainy evening, when a sudden car accident claimed the lives of his mother and father. The tragedy shattered Michael's world, leaving him reeling in a sea of grief and anger. How could God let this happen? He asked himself repeatedly, unable to find solace in the faith that had once sustained him. Consumed by pain, he stopped praying, abandoned church, and withdrew from his spiritual practices. Overwhelmed by a sense of betrayal, Michael distanced himself from anything that reminded him of the God he now felt had abandoned him. Michael's life without faith was bleak. He threw himself into work, using it as a distraction to avoid confronting his feelings. His days became a monotonous cycle of long hours at the office, empty evenings in front of the TV, and restless nights plagued by insomnia. He kept friends and family at arm's length, unwilling to let anyone see the void in his heart. Yet, despite his efforts to escape, small and inexplicable things began to happen. One evening, as he cleaned his apartment, he heard his mother's favorite hymn play softly on a radio he thought was turned off. Another time, he discovered his father's old Bible open on the dining table, turned to a verse about finding strength in times of loss. He dismissed these events as coincidences, refusing to entertain the idea that they might hold deeper meaning. Concerned friends and family tried to reach out, urging him to reconnect with his faith, or at least talk about his grief. But Michael pushed them away, unwilling to reopen wounds he felt would never heal. One crisp autumn afternoon, Michael visited the park near his apartment. Sitting on a bench, lost in thought, he was approached by an elderly man. The stranger's kind face and calm demeanor were oddly comforting. "You look like you're carrying a heavy burden," the man said, breaking the silence. Michael hesitated, unsure why he felt compelled to respond. The stranger continued, "Your parents loved you deeply. They're watching over you, waiting for you to see the signs." Michael's breath caught in his throat. "How do you know about my parents?" he asked. But the man simply smiled and walked away, leaving Michael stunned and uneasy. The stranger's cryptic words stayed with him, their meaning unclear until the anniversary of his parents' death. Reluctantly, Michael visited their graves for the first time in years. As he stood in silence, a sudden burst of sunlight broke through the overcast sky, illuminating the gravestones. At that moment, he heard a faint voice, a voice he would recognize anywhere. "We're still with you," his mother whispered. Tears streamed down Michael's face as he stood rooted in place, overwhelmed by an indescribable sense of peace and love. Returning home, he was drawn to a bookshelf he hadn't touched in years. Hidden inside one of his mother's favorite books, He found a letter she had written. "Michael," it read, "if you're ever reading this, it means I'm no longer here, but know this. God never leaves us, even when we feel lost. Faith is the bridge between pain and healing. Trust Him, my son, and you will find your way." The signs grew more frequent. He dreamed of his parents smiling at him, their expressions filled with warmth and reassurance. One evening, a candle on his mantelpiece lit itself, its flame flickering gently in the still air. Strangers he encountered seemed to offer him messages of hope, as though the universe was speaking directly to him. One day, a colleague at work needed help with a difficult project. Though he initially hesitated, Michael stepped in, recalling his parents' selflessness. The experience of helping someone reignited a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. Drawn by a longing he didn't fully understand, Michael found himself at his parents' favorite church. Sitting in the back pew, he whispered his first prayer in years. "If you're really there, show me the way." A week later, Michael visited the park his parents had often taken him to as a child. As he sat on a bench, a little girl approached him holding a delicate flower. "My mommy said this is for you," she said, placing the flower in his hand. "She says don't be sad anymore." Michael's heart stopped as he looked at the flower. It was his mother's favorite. A bloom that shouldn't have been growing at that time of year. In that moment, the weight of his grief lifted. He felt his parents' presence all around him, and finally understood that their love, and God's, had never left him. Michael returned home and knelt in prayer, not with anger or doubt, but with gratitude and hope. His faith, once shattered, had been restored, and his heart, once broken, began to heal. In the vibrant and supportive community dedicated to Jesus, Super Chat offers a unique and impactful way for viewers to actively participate in the mission of spreading faith and supporting charitable causes. When you engage in a live stream and use Super Chat, you are not just making a financial contribution, but also amplifying your voice within the community. This feature allows you to send a highlighted message along with your donation, which is prominently displayed during the live broadcast. It's a powerful way to show your support, share words of encouragement, or ask for prayers. Every Super Chat helps fund the community's various initiatives, from outreach programs to maintaining the digital presence that allows the message of Jesus to reach a wider audience. By participating in Super Chat, you're playing a crucial role in helping the community thrive, ensuring that it can continue to inspire, educate, and uplift others. Your contributions are more than just donations. They are a testament to your commitment to the values of love, generosity, and faith that define our shared journey. In the heart of our Jesus-centered community, Super Chat serves as a powerful tool for deepening engagement and enhancing our collective mission. This feature, available on live streaming platforms like YouTube, allows you to contribute financially during live broadcasts while simultaneously sharing a personalized message with the entire community. As you participate in Super Chat, your message and donation are highlighted, offering a unique opportunity to publicly express your support, share your personal testimony, or even request prayer for yourself or others. This visibility not only showcases your commitment, but also fosters a sense of camaraderie and shared purpose among all viewers. The contributions you make through Super Chat play a pivotal role in sustaining and expanding the community's efforts. Whether it's supporting outreach initiatives, funding community events, or maintaining the digital infrastructure necessary for live streams and online ministry, your donations help ensure that the message of Jesus reaches as many hearts as possible. By using Super Chat, you help to amplify the impact of our shared mission, making it possible for us to continue providing valuable resources, support, and inspiration to both existing members and newcomers alike. Moreover, Super Chat offers a way for you to be more involved in the life of the community. Your highlighted messages can encourage dialogue, spark discussions, and build connections with others who share your faith and values. It's not just about giving financially, it's about becoming an active participant in the growth and vibrancy of our community. Each Super Chat contribution helps to create a dynamic and interactive environment where ideas and support flow freely, making the community stronger and more unified. To make the most of Super Chat, it's important to understand how your contributions are utilized and to ensure transparency in the community's financial practices. Knowing that your support is used effectively to further the mission can enhance your sense of involvement and trust in the community. Additionally, publicly acknowledging and thanking donors during live streams not only shows appreciation, but also encourages others to join in, creating a ripple effect of generosity and engagement. In essence, Super Chat is more than just a financial tool. It's a means of connecting deeply with our community, supporting our shared goals, and actively participating in the mission of spreading Jesus' teachings. By contributing through Super Chat, you are helping to build a vibrant, supportive, and faith-driven community that thrives on mutual encouragement and collective action. Your involvement makes a significant difference, and together, we can continue to grow and impact lives in meaningful ways.